Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you're watching on YouTube, you'll see a link down below. You can click on it and you'll end up in Zoom. And there you see another link. You can click on that and you'll end up in Makana. And that's where you become a producer for the show. Your questions is the content for the show. This is how what we're going to talk about and how we're going to talk about it. Any question in the first hour for general media or virtual production is game. Second hour, we spend a little bit more time. Now on Saturdays, it's a little different. We have 2 hours or an hour and about an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes of Q&A. Then we take a little bit of a break and bring the teachers on, and at 9 o'clock we'll have another 2 hours of discussion, or as much as we need. We just open the window for 2 hours. It might be an hour, might be an hour and a half with teachers. Now that we don't stream that second part, so you do need to be here for that in Zoom. If you are interested in actually, if you think you can answer some of these questions and you'd like to be part of the panel, it's a great way to get to know people. It's a great way to really become part of the community. All you have to do is be here by 6:40 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Raise your digital hand, and we'll bring you in. If you're not sure if your mic and camera and everything else are ready, you can get here as early as 6, and we can just make sure everything's working. We're just kind of hacking around. Between 6 and 6:40, we're just messing around until you show up. So come in, check out your system if you'd like. But otherwise, we'd love to have you on the panel. It's a great place to be. So we highly recommend giving it a shot. And let's go ahead and jump into the questions. Guy, what do we have?
First one's coming in from Mike Beardmere in Reading, UK. And he says, is there a FAQ of minimum equipment and time that will be needed to contribute to Office Hours 2.0?
We're not going to, the minimums will continue to kind of move along slowly. We'll just see where we're at with everyone that's there. What I would say is that we would prefer in-ear monitors and a good mic and a good camera, web camera. Brio, I would say, is probably what we would consider as the minimum that we prefer to have as video. Audio is more important. So having a really strong audio mic is the most important piece of it. Video will be important. I think that for everyone who's involved, I think that the game has gotten so competitive between all of us that I would recommend at least a Brio, some good lighting. We're going to have suggested kits in September. I think that, by October, we're probably going to want to try to really make sure that everyone's got a really solid, setup, so that will be kind of where we're trying to go. But again, you should not worry about that too much right now. It's all very, flexible at the moment. We're trying to make, obviously the most important thing is that we have a great conversation and we have panelists that are here to contribute. So we don't want to scare panelists off thinking that they have to have some, crazy expensive rig to be part of the panel and to contribute to it. So reasonably good, pile mics and so on and so forth. We have people contributing to the panel that way, and that's just fine. So we want contribution first, but we want to keep on moving the quality up for what we're doing. So we'll just kind of do it slowly and we'll play with what's available. So next question.
Next one's coming in from Rupert McRae in Dallas, Texas. And he says, as the NDI Tools suite is a free product, what level of support can be expected from the vendor? Would one need to pay or support for critical production applications?
What is the support model for NDI? Is there a support model? Is it something that you, go ahead, Rupert.
So they appear to have some paid support options on their website, like a basic, a something, and a premium, all with different features and response times. But from what I just looked at briefly, it seems to relate to the physical products quite often. I just don't know how that applies to the free suite of tools that a lot of people typically use.
My experience with new tech is paying for the support is worth it. Like we've had the Skype boxes, the Skype TX boxes, and without a support, you get no support. so that's been my experience, and with support, it's reasonably good. So I think that my experience has been you get what you pay for when it comes to new tech. So, but I don't know about NDI specifically. Next question.
Andre Dole in Berlin says, could you please explain again how mix minus is working if you have a meeting in a meeting? Example given, a meeting for the panelists joins a meeting for the participants via USB webcam, maybe an ATEM. It was mentioned that Zoom does this mix minus itself reliably.
kind of working through that question there. Well, my understanding of what you're talking about would be that what we do for some things that are for some things that we're working on, one of the things that we do is that we have, a series of people, and they're all in essentially they're tied together in a show. But instead of streaming it, we push them into Zoom as one window. So the output of our entire show goes into a Zoom room, and then you have all the participants in that Zoom room. And you want to have a two-way communication between them. So someone could raise their hand in that Zoom room and talk to anyone in, quote unquote, the show, which is a bunch of other people that are in Zoom. But they're not all sharing the same room. What we need to do there is have a mix minus back and forth between those. So in our mixer, we're building that mix minus so that we don't feed the program, we don't feed the people asking questions from this Zoom, back to themselves through the program. So we have to basically say what we send back to Zoom is the mix minus this room. So we have it has its own bus, and we bring that down, if that's what you're talking about. I think that's the, and Zoom doesn't do that for what we're doing. If we're pushing that show in, Zoom does do a mix minus for all of us very effectively while we're talking. That's what I'm getting right now. I don't hear myself back from Zoom. That's the mix minus that it's building. But as far as putting a show into it, if there's interaction, you would need to build a mix minus for that. And that's how we do it. Next question.
I think that he means like, let's say you had a webinar and you had a meeting and you wanted to push the webinar into the meeting or vice versa. And I believe that when we had the Zoom rep on, he had mentioned that Zoom itself handles the mix minus. If you push a meeting or a webinar into a meeting, I think that's what the question relates to.
I don't know how you would do that. Like, I don't know how to push the meeting in without hardware.
That's what he's saying with the hardware. So Andre in his question saying, bring them in via an ATEM through the USB. So
I mean, it may just do its standard echo cancellation.
Yeah,
might
that's
do
exactly
that.
what it is.
But that would worry me. Like, I wouldn't do a production that way. I wouldn't depend on Zoom to do echo cancellation against a show into a meeting. That would be, it might work, but it could really come apart badly in that environment. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Yeah, it sounds like you're taking to the bat phone and putting it against the regular phone, like in the movie. So the only thing that would be better is if everybody was had headphones on and good microphones. That way, there's no bleed through that happens.
Yeah, but I think that's using the echo cancellation in a way that it wasn't designed, and I could see a lot of bad things happening pretty quickly. No matter what, it would lower the quality of the audio, because when it does echo cancellation, it is degrading the audio because it has to remove things. So I would do it in hardware. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Douglas Carmichael, and he says, when Office Hours 2.0 focuses on the end product, the YouTube stream, how will you handle allowing educators to speak more freely if you couldn't access the source Zoom feed?
We're going to have, a lot of things that are still all happening. There's a show, like what we're doing now is kind of what's going to YouTube, and that will continue to increase in quality. And that'll be, the focus on that will be mostly Monday through Friday from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Like that's kind of the outward push. And we're going to spend a lot of energy on that to experiment with a new kind of broadcast. For everything else, I don't know whether much of that will be broadcasted out. It'll probably be similar to what we're doing now. So, Zoom rooms, meetings, labs, having a Zoom room open 24/7 that we can all just kind of, the post show. My goal is by September, the post show is running 24/7. Well, not 24/7, 21 hours, so between 6 and 9, at 9 a.m. we go to the post show, and the post show closes at 6 a.m. when the pre-show for the show starts. So that's kind of the, I think that's going to be the model, is that. So there'll be a lot of things that are not broadcasted, and we're not trying to make it shiny. I think it would be a mistake. I think there's a magic to this kind of meandering conversation that that happens in the pre-show and the post-show that we definitely don't want to lose. In fact, I think that it's as valuable or sometimes more valuable than what we do in the 2 hours that we answer questions. But I think the 2 hours is the most digestible, for an average person to listen to. But a lot of there's a lot of really, really great morsels, and just, we'll talk 45 minutes about one subject. Like here we talk about things and we kind of are conscious to, there's a bunch of questions and we have to keep moving through them. And that's a state that is useful for people to hear and listen to. And so we don't want to, that is, and we want to make that better and better and better. So, and we want to, eventually we'll have most likely a podcast that is the best of, there's like 2 hours of last week. So if you didn't listen to all of office hours, here's 2 hours of the best of it, when we get a team to put it together, so that you can have just a podcast that you just listen to or watch that is just a condensed, the best questions. And one of the ways we're going to do that is eventually you're going to be able to not only vote on the questions, but vote on the answers. And so it'll be easier for our team or whatever team we put together to do this, because they'll just see what the users said. These are the best questions. They'll look at the votes, and the questions that are the highest voted ones we'll give them a guide to where they're going to, cut things down to. But we'll have like a 2 hour digestible version of the 20 some hours that we do. I don't know, it's not 20, it's 10 or 12 or whatever of that main broadcast. So I think that we'll be continuing to look at ways to make it more digestible, parts of what we do to be more digestible to the overall different groups, people who don't have the time to listen to this all the time. And then, but I think we're going to continue to constantly have things that are much more vertical or just much less organized, because I think that we've built up this capacity for all of us to sit here and talk about whatever we want to talk about over long periods of time and have multiple cameras and figure things out. And I think that we don't want to make all of it look like TV. I mean, that's not, but there's 2 hours that we want to experiment. That'll be our expression of like, this is where we could be going. Next question.
Next one's coming in again from Douglas Carmichael.
Oops, let's pop that out. That got filed in there. It's an education
interesting
tag.
I thought that I have mine sorted by. Oh, it is sorted. That's interesting. I had it sorted by. Strange. Okay. Anyways, Jim Hank. Click the answer button. Jim Hankins asks, I just added another Stream Deck XL to Companion. How do I get separate pages per deck?
Go ahead, David.
If you open the Companion control panel, under the surfaces thing, each surface has a slider underneath, so you can set the start page. So I have a Mini, regular, and XL, so it goes from 1 to 10. The regular starts at page 11. The XL starts at page 25, and that way I've got a range of stuff that I can set them up default-wise.
Next question.
Next one's coming in from Douglas Carmichael, and he asks, I've heard a lot about Zixi and perused their website, but it's not clear what it does or how it is used. Does it basically transcode one stream into multiple streams from multiple endpoints? How expensive can it be?
Put that in the second hour, and I'll reach out. I know some folks at Zixi, and we see if we can get them to come in and really talk tech with you about how Zixi works. But essentially, the way we use it, at least, it doesn't recompress for us. It can. It just rewraps things and transports them. So we're not. So it'll put it in a wrapper that allows it to move and ensure it's what we call reliable UDP. So it's not. Again, the way we use it is not recompressing. I do believe it has that feature. The encoders are free, I believe. It's the decoders that they charge for. And so that's the model, is to make sure that anybody can send something in. It just costs money to receive it, and I don't know what the prices are. It's built into a lot of things, and so a lot of times it's separated from our cost. Teradek had a $1,000 option that you could add to your Teradek, so that you would have Zixi. The Elemental link just goes up to that. So those are different ways of managing that when I don't know what the direct price is. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Jason Corella, and thank you for the little speaker icon that lets me hear how to pronounce your name. That was super handy. First time I've ever used that. Isolated audio file on the ATEM Mini ISOs are very large. Any way to adjust the settings? Workaround ideas. Isolated video files include the program audio instead of isolated channel audio with no apparent way to change.
I'm surprised that, I mean, compared to video, audio files are not usually that big. So I'm not sure. And I will admit that I have an ISO because I was like, oh, I don't want to do anything without, I'm not going to buy a regular one, but I've done very little recording out of it. So does anyone else have any experience with that, where they felt like the audio files were really large? I think that it is in a lot of ways with the ISO series, I believe it's kind of, you get what it records. So I don't think that there's any way to adjust that. Go ahead, Leo.
I did notice they are quite large. I was quite surprised at how big they are. But
are they PCM uncompressed?
I haven't actually looked to see what they are, but I assume they are. And also the other thing that's quite weird, that especially as you're taking in something like an HDMI input, which has got a video and audio, you would expect to end up with the video file have the audio embedded in it, but they're two separate files, which is great. But you can imagine if you're used to something like Premiere Pro, where you just drop in a file and then you just sync them by audio, it was a little bit more faffy than I was expecting, but it wasn't terrible.
My guess is that its default is to record uncompressed. Just that it just records a PCM file as opposed to trying to put it down to AAC. And my guess is they decided that that's probably what you would want, with audio, because once you compress the audio, if you want to do any work to it, it's not a lot of places to go. And so I think that that's my guess, is they had to make a choice of what that would look like, and they made that choice. And it also could be processor issues, because it's less processing to not compress the audio than to compress it. Go ahead, Leo.
Yeah, and I think that I was going to exactly say that. The thing already runs hot. It runs hot with its two fans at full speed, and secondly, as you say, you just want everything that it's going to do. The fact is, you press the ISO button and you just want everything that it's coming in, going out, and worry about it. The biggest problem we have is that with SSD disks that we're plugging into the USB, we're just having to swap them fairly regularly to keep up, and dumping it off to somewhere else to keep up.
No, absolutely. Yeah, go ahead, David.
There is a way you can FTP into the device and pull things off, so you don't have to disconnect. And you can do that kind of live. So if you stop and start ISOs, you can FTP and pull off previous stuff and clear things out.
I never tried to do that. That's good. You can FTP into most of the drive versions of things. So it's interesting. Next question.
And on that note, the HyperDeck 8K is pretty slick, where it's got a 10G. That was one of the cool things I loved about having that one, is you can pull those files off super quick with 10G on a HyperDeck 8K. All right, next one coming in from Douglas Carmichael. He says, what do you think helped PCs and component makers like NVIDIA bring an end to the graphics workstation market? And he has Silicon Graphics et al. In parentheses here.
Flexibility. Like it was expense and flexibility, I think, was their downfall. Go ahead, Rupert.
And the density of components. I mean, you can now get on a card really what took up a whole computer in the past.
Yeah, I mean, I had an O2 that I worked on, and at home, and so I had an O2, and the issue was it looked gorgeous, and it would do some things just absolutely amazingly well. The problem was that there were the apps that were written for it. There weren't a lot of extra things that you could do with it, so it really was just the thing that it did. And PCs passed it. Like, it got to a point where I had a Sun. I had a bunch of other things that did really heavy processing, but it very quickly got to a point where the PCs were just with the cards and the memory and everything else you could add to them, you could build ones that were a quarter of the price of those big machines that were faster. That were just doing everything that we could do faster than they could. And they didn't know how to compete in that market. Like, they just didn't know how to build something. Theirs were bulletproof and way better in a lot of ways, but they couldn't figure out how to keep the performance, parity. Go ahead, Leo.
And you see this in the car market, if anything, that the number of engines, the same engine is used across fleets and fleets and fleets of cars. And it means that they can increase the reliability. They can make one tweak and they affect 20 million engines. And it's the same in the PC market. You have to start with an individual product. You have to start with something. And I think the day is that, okay, there's probably millions of PCs out there that have got graphics, workstation, power capabilities that are never being used for it. But for the 20% or 5% that are using it, it just makes it a much easier process, I think.
Nigel?
Yeah, I think the other thing is the move from hardware to software. So if you look at some of the early workstation, they earned their money by charging you a large amount for the hardware. If you move down the PC line, if you buy a graphics card, a professional and a consumer graphics card, they're probably the same chips nowadays, but they've got completely different software running on them. And I don't know those guys kept up with the same software game.
Yeah, and again, that was one of those things that the market was, there was less people in the market, but they were willing to spend a lot more. Alias Studio, which is one of the apps that I used in, it's hard to call it an app, it's $60,000 or it was in the late 90s. But that's what I modeled on. And it was a really expensive piece of hardware that was mostly used by automotive. We used it at ILM. But there was a small market. And before that, before Photoshop, it was before everything. There's always something that comes out that's way cheaper. But before Photoshop, we had Cytex. And Cytex was this, they were very slowly and very expensive Cytex operators. And then the bunch of interns like me came in with Photoshop and took their jobs, and so then Cytex, became less, less useful. And we did horrible things. We made all kinds of horrible mistakes trying to figure things out. It even got as organized as they created a magazine called Ray Gun that you couldn't actually read. And so anyway, it looked pretty though. Yeah, what were you gonna say, Guy?
Yeah, a friend of mine named Tom Nault, he was involved when the Bluetooth technologies were just evolving. And he told me that it was all about trying to get deals done with different manufacturers, even if you were breaking even, to get the chips in there. And then once Apple heard that he had gotten these chips inside of Motorola, he got an offer from Qualcomm for $20 million and sold his company. So he walked away with all this money just because he heard we're local to Microsoft, and there was a Microsoft user group, and he just heard what was going on behind the scenes. So it's interesting to get like kind of the inside scoop as to which technology is doing well with data. So there's a lot of smart people behind the scenes making deals at getting things installed, and then that kind of takes over once you get that, quantity versus, it's just adoption essentially.
Next question.
Next one's coming in from Juan C. Robles, and he says, NDI SDK Conference besides NDI 5 promises, what do you think of the event production related?
Did anyone see it? I'm afraid that I didn't. I was in production, so I did not see it come through. So I guess we're stumped on that one just because we didn't actually see it. Next question. Yeah,
I'd heard there was a little bit of a dumpster fire with the NDI remote bombing.
I think all I heard was that someone said, I hope they're not using their own NDI to do the remotes. And so, I will say that this is a pretty common problem for companies that don't actually do a lot of their own events. I'm sure that they don't do a ton of their own. They do it for other people. They kind of move through it, but they don't get their head around how much pre-production is required to make something work well. And they go, oh, this is magic. So we'll just connect people with our new technology. We will sit there and spend an hour or two with each person, making sure that they have a wired connection, checking it. Like if we did a major launch, we wouldn't work with anyone that didn't have 10 megs up. Like we just said, like, we can't have you on the show, like period. And people say, wow, we can make it work. And they really want to have that person. And they don't realize that they're going to junk up their whole show and make their technology look bad. So that's and you just have to have hard lines, and you have to have 10 megs up for a high profile event, and period. Like you just stop, looking, and you just either move them or eliminate them from the show, because they're not going to provide the quality that is necessary for people to watch. And especially when you're trying to create an example. Go ahead, Leo.
Sorry. Exactly the same with, I have this with StreamYard. They have a town hall every single.
Oh, you muted yourself. Unless you did that on purpose.
I'm not. Sorry, my hands are off the buttons and it's muting. Exactly the same with StreamYard. On Sundays, they have a town.
Oh, is someone, how is that?
I have no idea. I'm not doing it.
That is so weird.
I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it.
Keep talking.
I'm going to keep my hands here as I talk. So on Sundays, they have StreamYard have a town hall, and then the town hall, there people turn up without great tech, and it's like, just because you produce good tech, you think that you can turn up and your tech will solve problems, and it just doesn't, and it really infuriates me when you see it sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a couple of the StreamYard things that I watch and I feel like they don't really get it. Like, I just don't feel like they get what they're doing. You know, like they're building this platform and they don't understand. And I guess my frustration with that, which I'm sure you share, is that it makes it harder for all of us when they screw that up. You know, when companies, especially ones in our space, like for me, you know, the Zoom is a good example of, I get a little edgy because all their events are in front of virtual. And I think there's some cultural thing, like they've made a decision that they want to make it okay to use virtual backgrounds, but the sizzling along the edges make me just not want to watch. Like, and I won't watch any of the Zoom, you know, any of their office hours, anything else. I won't watch any of them because they have virtual backgrounds, and I believe it creates a cognitive load, and it does for me. And so, anyway, so like Zoomtopia comes out, and I just feel like then everybody thinks of that as what the pinnacle of a virtual event is, you know, is that, you know, not great. I was trying to say something without swearing, you know, like what, not great, you know, like, so, but I can't think of anything more articulate. Anyway, so it's so frustrating because there's so many places where we can produce these great events, and we do events where people just can't believe that it was done over Zoom. And I just feel like you need to show people that. I mean, even what we do every day, we do this every day, and it looks better than anybody else's, you know, solution. And it's just anyway. Next question.
Simon Ray in Shrewsbury, UK says, digging through old shows, I saw a mini competition to see who could come up with the best coffee making video. Are there any plans for more challenges to help us hone our skills as we compete?
Yeah, go ahead, Rupert. Can't hear you, Rupert.
I remember that episode. I'm not sure whether it was about the coffee making or the video making, but I'd like to see a video on there terminating Cat5 cables or Cat6.
We have talked about doing kind of a geek Olympics or a production Olympics where we have, you know, like someday, and we have the space to do it. So we've been talking about doing it. We have to figure out all the things around it, but it would be but for us, it would be cable making. It would be, we thought one would be really fun would be cable rolling, you know, so you have like, you know, instead of doing the 100-meter, it's the 100-meter cable or the 50-meter cable, you know, 10-meter cables, you know, and you have to roll them, and you're, of course, you're judged on speed and accuracy and how clean the cable looks at the end. And there can be a lot of upset about the judges, and the judges from Russia, you know, always want a cleaner cable than the ones from Bolivia. No, go ahead, David.
I'm just curious. I've not seen that, but did that help hone the coffee making skills or the video production?
You know, it did
skills?
both. It did both. Okay. You know, what was interesting about it, and we're going to do more. We're definitely going to do more of those. You know, I go in and out of these heavy production pushes, and so there's a lot of things that I think are going to be good ideas until I get out of them. And my big push for the rest of the summer, starting next week, will be to build up all the teams, which makes it, right now I'm kind of you know, I'm the bottleneck. You know, it's just that there's things that I still am doing, and there's plenty of people that are ready to help, and probably people who jump in and help. And it's literally me just figuring out a model to hand it all off. so I'm going to be handing off a lot of things over the next 2 months. And so the main thing is that we will do a lot more labs. I have a feeling that Saturdays will be pretty busy if people want them to be. They don't have to be. You know, but there'll be lots of different opportunities. But one of the things we did is the coffee making thing was something that we all do, not all, some of us do a lot, and are pretty serious about it. And it was really interesting that it's a nice small thing that is relatively easy to show how to do it. But what was great is that it also had enough room that we could show people's creativity. We got to see what their house looked like. We got to see what their, there's a we get to know each other better from that process. And we had a lot of that on Pixelcore, where we did HDRs, like do an HDR at your house. And this was still HDRs. And this is 15 years ago. People would take them. And what was really interesting was we saw 200 or 300 people's backyards. And you just you felt like you knew them better when you saw that, and where they came from, and we had other challenges in Pixelcore where, like, go take one of your favorite places that's within 10 miles of your house, whatever that is, and go shoot a 2-minute video about it, just to cut it together and tell us why and some of them were markets, and some of them were farms, and some of them were a waterfall, and some of them were, and you just saw these places all over the world. It was really fascinating. So we'll do more of that. And again, it's a mixture of technology and community building, which I think also is the same thing with the cooking. And so, which we're going to start up again in August. Next question.
Next one's in from Rupert McRae, and he says, are there any published endorsements or white papers for NDI provided by any professional body or industry association?
I think that's the advantage and disadvantage of NDI. is that it's really it's run much more off the, from Newtek's development crew. And it means that they can move fast and break things. But it also means that they don't have the same, it doesn't make as much sense. They don't want a big body to do that, because they're trying to just solve the problems that they want to solve. It's two different approaches. I mean, NDI is one approach that we can do it quickly and fast. And SMPTE 2110 is, well, we'll all get together and we'll all make an agreement, and then we'll all move forward. And so we don't know which one will win. So they're both moving as fast as they can, and we'll see how it goes. Next question.
Oh, wait.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to add to that one. There was a book put out by Stream Geeks earlier in the week. It's a free book. I got to say, the editing in it, having just scanned through like the NDI Access Manager section, I was appalled that somebody would release a book like that. And Dr. Andrew Cross was on their show earlier in the week with them, touting the book. And I was like, no way would I let this out. I mean, just on one page, I found tons of errors. It was like, what the heck are you guys thinking? So hopefully they clean that up and re-release it. But it's a good place to start, get something. On the NDI.TV website, there are classes. I mean, they're like $1,000 NDI performance tests that you can jump in and get accredited. So there's some hardcore documentation behind the scenes, but you got to pay for it. It's not free.
Yeah. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Dan Huber, and he says, do we think Apple will have new hardware ready and available this fall with hardware and logistic constraints?
Go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, I think, and I think it's been discussed a few times before. I think that Apple's got their own pipeline, and they're not relying on the sources where these shortcomings are happening. So I think they're going to be okay.
My understanding is that Apple buys components years in advance. Like they're not, and they have priority because they're the largest fish, and they're literally the largest fish for most of these components. I knew a manufacturer that couldn't release their product for 18 months because it shared a chip with the phone. And it was just like that. The phone, the iPhone had all of them. Like there was no, and the manufacturers are not going to say no to Apple. They're going to say no to everybody else. So I think that Apple will probably be able to continue to manufacture without much of a break. We see some of it already. I mean, things go out slowly when they have a high demand, but I don't think this is going to hit them nearly as hard as everybody else. Next, because I think they probably also saw this coming a lot. They know a lot about their supply chain. So I think that they probably solved a lot of these early on with a lot of money. Next question.
Robert Shoji says, can Alex briefly describe his lighting setup and background?
Yeah, let's see here. So that's the lighting up there. Those are some 100s in a very bad, it started rolling off. It was taped up. But that's the polarizing filter on that center one there. But these are 100s that are up there. There is one right over my head. That's a 68 that's there. And then down there you can see the light. Oh, kind of see past me. There's that. And that's the mix panel 60. And so that's kind of that's what I have with the lighting. The mix panel 60 is great just because I'm able to put whatever color I want back there. There's lots of other lights that can do it. It just produces a nice high quality color that's diffuse and it's easy to do. And I keep on meaning to, I have a bunch of Pavo tubes and I just want to, I mean to test that. If it's the same, it'd be a lot smaller. It'd be nicer to use. So I'm planning to play with that. I just haven't had time to move I started tearing apart parts of my studio, and I'll finish that tear down over the next couple of weeks and rebuild it. And then I'm going to try to use the Pavo tube instead. But yeah, it's a lot of light. It's a lot of big soft light. That's the thing that makes it work. So, and once you get used to it, I have to admit that you get used to this, and it's hard to meet with anyone outside of, and it makes a difference. Like I showed up at a meeting with a pretty high level person yesterday, and it's good to have for a meeting when you have a really, really good signal. So I would highly recommend doing that investment. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael in with one that says, would an Elgato Ring Light, and he's got a link here for the ring light, pass minimum standards of lighting for office hours 2.0, or would a pair of key light or key light air lights be more effective?
Again, I think that what I would say about the Elgato stuff is I feel like it's a lot of form over function. Like I feel like you're paying extra for something that looks really nice. So if you have people coming and visiting you, I think that it's a great, it's nice if you're doing behind the scenes and you want to show it off. I don't think their products are, if I was going to get a ring light, I'd look at what Guy sells as far as the larger ones. Because I wouldn't necessarily put it as a ring. I'd probably put it up and over to one side. Yeah. So I think that would be, I think that I would look at something like that, or again, what I'm using are the NAND lights. So that'll be, that would be a thing. Yeah, go ahead, Rupert.
So if you are to use a ring light in anything other than like a direct on, does it really make any difference if you're just using it as a big source someplace else? Could it just be any other source, or is it?
It could be. It gives you some options, and it's a nice big source. I still think that I keep on telling Guy, I still think that there's a product that wants to be a tent that goes over the ring light, that just tents over and turns it into a half ball of a big diffuse ball that you can just kind of put up in one angle. I think it does give you the option. I think the ring light look is something that you may want to use here and there. For what we do, I'm not super excited about the ring light all the time as far as the look goes. I think for some people it looks great with their background and everything else, and some people it looks really sourcey, like it's like you see the little circles and you don't see everything. So I think it works in some cases. So I think the ring light gives you a lot of flexibility, to do a couple different. What's great is when you're out somewhere and you want to do a quick shoot, and you just need some fill, for what you're doing. A ring light is amazing. Like it's just. Because you just drop something into it. And before the ring lights became a thing, we were buying big ring lights that they use in fashion so that we could put a whole monitor in the center of it, with a big old monitor inside of this huge ring light. And it looked really nice. But it was more about us like doing something quickly and easily. Whereas if I have time and I have a setup that isn't going to change, I would tend to use more directional light, to grab onto it. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Carlos Ronconi in Rio de Janeiro. And he says, there's more NDI apps for the PC than for Mac OS. Is that just the beginning of development or a market situation?
I think NewTek is more of a PC company than a Mac company. Just the support built up around the TriCaster and solving those solutions. And so I think it's just a function of how it's DNA. Go ahead, Rupert.
Could this be not biased necessarily, but did they just realize that Mac people may be more in production and they may just lean more towards something else?
Maybe, but I really think it just has to do with the NewTek NDA, DNA of NDI, that they don't really look at Macs that much. They don't do anything with them. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
There could also be issues with privacy going back and forth. I mean, this NDI is very open to send things back and forth. So having it on Mac, there might be fighting on that.
Next question.
Next one's in from Rupert McRae, and he says, broadcasters are among the first to already be adopting SMPTE 2110. Is this an example of where broadcasters are in fact leading the way?
Broadcasters have to make these decisions over very long periods of time, so that when they do the install, it's not like, oh, I'm going to spend $10,000. It's going to be like, I'm going to spend $100 million on something, and I would like it to last for the next 10 years or 5 years or something like that. So, they're going to move slowly, but when they move, they tend to look 5 years out or 10 years out because they want that equipment to continue to work. And so 2110 is, they've been working on that, and now everybody's getting ready to rev. I mean, I don't know. I think everybody's getting ready to rev. There's a lot of people that seem to be updating. And it's really more of when everybody does the upgrades, and, typically we'll see a bunch of slow upgrades right now. And if tradition continues, in 2024 is when 2110 will go in almost everywhere. And the reason that 2024 will happen is because of the elections. So elections is where money is. So broadcasters have more money than they know what to do with during the elections because of all those political ads. And so they're just awash with money. And so everybody gets their wish list together and they work on things and they do small upgrades and they do a bunch of little bits and pieces and everything else. And they get it all ready to go and they get their ideas together, and then they start making their requests at the late 2020, like late 2023, going into the fiscal year of 2024, whatever that looks like for them. They're going to make a whole bunch of requests for the election. And, then all of 2024, it might even be 22, but they're building towards that because there's so much money. And so that's why we usually see these in broadcast. We see the surges coming every 4 years because everybody has money. Like it's the little broadcasters, it's the big broadcasters, it's the networks, it's the, suddenly there's this, billions and billions of dollars they don't have on a day-to-day basis just flow into the system. And usually that's when you see the biggest upgrade curves. So, so my expectation is 2110 becomes normalized in 2025 is probably when we see it just slam in. Next question.
Another one in from Rupert McRae, and he says, does anyone have experience with using Zoom's own webinar web-based rewatch feature for publishing webinar recordings to participants after the event? Does this provide 1080, and would this be a better publishing tool method than YouTube?
Go ahead, Leo.
I can't answer about the 1080. What I can answer is that it is actually quite an interesting environment because you can actually flip between the gallery mode and you can flip to the spots individual. And it was I was actually really, really surprised at how good it was as a post-watch thing, particularly if you've then turned on the, not translation, whatever the feature is. So you actually get all the word descriptions. It's like, wow, this is actually almost like a packaged thing that you could say, here you go, watch it, use it again. So I was quite surprised.
I think that, with the YouTube one, it's been easier because there's a group of people who don't want to use Zoom for whatever reason, or they just want to, and YouTube's easy and it plays out on a lot of different platforms easily, and they don't have to have a web page, and you can use the YouTube app in lots of different places to make that work. And so I think that's why we chose YouTube for it. I did think about just putting the records up or publishing them, and I just felt like YouTube would be easier for folks to see it. Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, with the cloud records, the nice thing is that there's no ads, so people can watch them and not get hit with any ads after the fact. And
right.
The other thing is it won't be 1080 unless you had a 1080 account. It pulls based on what's happening at that moment. And so if it didn't happen at that moment, it doesn't get stored that way or recorded.
We should try it. So just let's maybe next week I'll try to just actually do a record, stop and start, and set it all up and just see what happens. Just compare the two. I think it's worth it as a research project. Go ahead, Rupert.
So this is how Zoom publishes all its webinars, like its training events and stuff. You can enroll for what they've got coming up, or you can rewatch a lot of what they've already published, and they use that tool. And like Leo says, it's versatile in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I mean, I've been trying to think about whether it makes sense for us to just publish this later, rather than publishing it live on YouTube. But I think we're going to move more towards broadcast. Eventually, we're going to have our own player because there's so many things I want to do from a searchability perspective that it'll be easier for us to tie those things in. Next question.
Next one comes in from Douglas Carmichael. He says, would there be a monitor top camera, preferably 4K, preferably 4K, that would both pass office hour standards and provide an HDMI output for an ATEM Mini? So a loop through.
Sounds like a huddle cam. Like a huddle cam would have HDMI out to the Mini. It would also, And I think it's 4K. Well, it does 1080, right? And it does pan and scan inside of that.
It does do 3840 by 2160 on the HDMI out. You have to set it in the settings though, because it's a 4K camera.
And it's looked pretty good. I mean, it's not great, but it's pretty good. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
The only thing about that is if you use the USB side, you can't use them both at the same time.
Right.
You can't use them both at the same time.
You can?
You can use USB and HDMI on the huddle cam.
Rupert?
Really? Okay.
A iPhone in a bracket.
It will.
Filmic Pro with HDMI out.
Yeah. iPhone with that would work as well. Absolutely. And the newer iPhones, probably 8 and above, look amazing. I think we've seen people come in with them and they just look dynamite. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Andrew Flowerdew in Warwick, UK, and he says, "Do you think the announcement of Windows 365 will be useful to you and your workflows? Will these instances make sense for some or all of your workloads?"
Go ahead, Rupert.
It's Warwick, but I think it's going to be interesting. I mean, looking over the history of where the cloud's taken us, I mean, like, there are things that we just don't have to worry about anymore. Like, I used to administer Exchange servers back in the day. That's gone. It's in the cloud now. As a user, I don't have to worry about where my mail is anymore because it's in Office 365. I think this may take us in a similar direction. There will be certain things you can just use this for that you end up not having to worry about anymore. What will be interesting to see is whether you can scale the configuration of these virtual machines, like how you can in AWS. That'll define how many workflows you can use them for. If you need to do a hard piece of work, can you scale up the config and bring it back down? It also means that you could have your productivity environment, at least in Windows, set up and then just access it from anywhere, which would be very useful.
Yeah, I think that Windows and Microsoft, they are serving an ecosystem. Apple serves its own ecosystem. Cisco serves its own ecosystem, in the sense that a lot of people will buy into it just because it's part of everything else that they're buying. And so I think that they have some advantage to that. And I'm assuming that's as they make Teams better, as they do the 365. There's a huge market that is using 365, and having anything add on to that continues to add value. Does it have to have parity with everything else? Probably not. But what they do give you is the simplicity of it working, and tying in and being easy to navigate. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, and to Rupert's point as well, the terrestrial device can be lower powered and put all the back end stuff up in the cloud for enterprise anyway.
Yeah, and if you're able to put a big machine there, if you have good bandwidth, and you could just use a little B-Link by Courtney. If you're listening, you could have a tiny little $300 thing that's running big graphics solutions and everything else, and all it has to have is a fast connection. I mean, that's what we get again if you open up MetaHuman. By the way, we're going to be doing some MetaHuman stuff in August. I would highly recommend going ahead and registering and figuring it out, opening it up, and everything else. We'll talk more about it, but that's a good example where they're using a very powerful machine, and all you have is a web browser, and you're just working against it. And if you have a good internet connection, it works great. Go ahead, Rupert.
I think this will also become interesting at upgrade time. If you're on a PC now or any platform and you get to the point here in 6 months, a year, where I need to upgrade, well, are you going to put hardware on your desk, or just use the machine you have as a thin client to access a much more powerful machine in the cloud?
Yeah. But what are we going to do on Tuesdays then?
Next question.
Douglas Carmichael with one that says, "Alex, you mentioned in-ear monitors as the minimum audio standard for contributing to Office Hours 2.0. Would over-ear headphones suffice, or do they need to be custom fitted in-ear monitors?"
They don't need to be custom fitted. I mean, I use these little, I use audio implements, or a Ear Hero, or Autos are like $40-$50. They don't have to be custom fit. They just pop in. At some point, over the ear won't be acceptable. I definitely want to manage everybody's expectations that that's not going to work for where we're going. So you do need to think about how it's going to go in, but how it goes in will be up to you. Next question.
David Brady here on the panel in New York says, "In regards to helping out more when we can, will there be an audition process or other ways to submit show reels, etc.?"
Go ahead, Rupert.
Yeah, it's held every day, and look for the link below.
One of the things as far as contributing, I think it's mostly we're gonna give people opportunities to take on things that they think, we're gonna talk to people about it, and then we'll give them the opportunity to work on it. I think that show reels will be great. I think that a lot of I think we just want to see what they can do. I think that would be the and I think that for some people, especially when you're on the panel and you're answering questions, we get a pretty good idea of what you can do. So I think that's, or what at least. So I think that for a lot of these things, I think we'll, if you think you have something to offer, I think what you should do is ping me right now. But we're going to have a team of people who are doing that kind of thing, and so I think that we'll be trying to figure those things out. But a lot of it is we'll give people opportunities to play in areas that are safe. So Saturdays and Sundays, and we'll probably Mondays are going to probably be a little bit of a lab section. So we'll give people places to play, the labs, the after hours, those types of things, and then the goal will be to, as we go through that, is to just find the people who want to do more, and so and I think that is going to be a. I thought David just left. He was like, I asked the question. I'm out of here. Like, are you there, David? Can you hear us? No, he's frozen. He's having some kind of technical issue. Anyway, but yeah, so far what has been the most successful is that people just arrive. They just, they show up, they're passionate about things. I see them doing stuff in Discord, or they're here on the panel. They show off what they can do. It hasn't been as organized as a show reel. It's more of a people getting, jumping up and just getting involved, and then next thing you know, they're doing more, and then the next thing you know, they're working with other people. That seems to be the pattern here, is that there's so much collaboration that's going on, not just with me, but there's so many people that I know that are hiring each other, working on projects with each other, just supporting each other, within the network. Go ahead, David.
That was the luck of the Irish. I don't know. Spectrum just freaked out on me for a second, so I apologize for missing my own question.
No worries. I was like, wow, what did I say? David just left. He was just like, the heck with you, I'm out of here. And yeah, exactly. So anyway, so the big thing is that I'm a big fan of giving people an opportunity to, we'll hand them something that preferably is not dangerous, and sometimes dangerous, but preferably not dangerous, and we'll see how it goes. And then people sort themselves out just by, sometimes they replace current skills with pure, like when I got a job at ILM or Lucasfilm, I had no idea what I was doing. Like what I knew how to do was work really, really, really hard. And so that was the skill set that I had. Was I got there, I sent them a couple models, and there was no reel. They had heard that I know what I was doing. It was completely fabricated by the fact that I made things look like they were doing 15 minutes, that it took me like 15 minutes, and it took me 8 hours to do. And I'd posted on the AOL forums. And so they had a distorted view of what I was able to do. And when I, because I would act like it was a quick answer, and it was just an enormous amount of work for me to figure it out, because I didn't know what I was doing. And then when I got there, what I replaced with a lack of skill was time. And so I got there at 6 a.m. in the morning. I left at 10 or 11 at night. And I did that six days a week. On Sundays, I only did 6 hours. And I just cranked, and I learned a lot. I learned an enormous amount over a year and a half working at Lucasfilm, and then at ILM. At ILM, I couldn't work those hours because the union would get upset. The thing is that what I want to give people opportunities to do is not just say, this is what I know how to do, but this is what I'm willing to work on. That's this is what I'm willing to figure out. And so we want to give them places where they can do that, where the failure doesn't have huge repercussions, which is usually in paying work. And so we want to figure out ways to do that, and then less paying work, and then more paying work, and then whatever that is. But the point is, we want to give people an opportunity to do what, if they're willing to replace skill with effort, you want to give people that opportunity. Next question.
Actually, on that note, if I can add something to it. I've been able to help a couple of people out in office hours with webinar accounts, because I have an enterprise. So I was given a few free ones. So if there's somebody who wants to practice, like cutting the show or having some people on, let me know in Discord. Like Leo's one of the guys, Victor, I'll give you, basically it's your own TV channel. You know, it's like 1080p webinar would normally cost you a lot of money.
Yeah.
If you have a good show concept that's, you know, something you want to do, let me know and I'll help you out. All right.
Yeah.
Next one.
And you know, I think that you want to look, the best thing to do when you have free time is to, in my opinion, is to fill it with things that make you better at where you want to go. You know, like that you just want to find ways to do that. And again, we're going to break this up. We're going to have more hosts involved. We're going to have more people cutting the show, more people asking questions. We're going to kind of break that all up so that we're slowly building, you know, because it just takes practice, you know, to make all of that work. Next question.
Yeah, I was noticing on Mark Horner's show, he didn't have somebody to help cut the show, and you could just see his eyeballs getting distracted. And I was like, oh, Mark, I wish you would have asked. I'd be happy to help you, man. Or somebody on the panel would be happy to help you.
In the same sense that I say that there's gonna be lots of opportunities for you to help us or other people, you want to offer that, and you also want to ask for it. Like if you're not, you know, inside of this group, if you say, hey, I'm doing a show, could anyone help? Maybe you get the wrong schedule and people can't, but there's a lot of people here that are looking for experience and looking just to help, you know, just to, you know, bring, you know, how we, you know, all boats rise together. And in this case, I think we're a very good example of that. Go ahead, Leo.
I have a show coming out this coming Friday. It's a 24-hour show. I put out the call out on here and I filled the positions of people to help who want to learn how to use StreamYard and AWS and vMix. And it's great. It's great because I'll spend 3 hours going through exactly how I do it and showing it. And maybe it'll be how they already knew, or it'll be a different way of doing it. And it's just passing the knowledge on. And
the best thing to do is to think about being involved with asking questions, and in Mukana, that's kind of your first layer of that. Then being involved in Discord and answering questions and being part of that. Then being part of the post-show or pre-show, and being part of those conversations. Then being part of the panel and sharing things if you have that experience. Then being part of you know, projects and you know, labs and so on and so forth. And that's a great way to get better at what you do, but also to get to know everybody. You know, network through use. You know, is a really, you know, rather than, you know, all the other stuff we do. Go ahead, Rupert.
What would be the best channel in Discord to do that? And if whichever one it is, would that be a good one to make sure everybody has notifications set to? So if there's anything that anybody needs help with quick, that people get notified and jump in?
It's yeah, I think we should probably make it more formal, because right now it's been kind of, I need help has been the list, but we probably need to have something like job opportunities and volunteer opportunities at this point. I think when we started all of this, there was not very many of us. And so it didn't, you know, it was kind of a generalized thing. And then it's nice because it's two different sections, like, hey, I'm looking for something that I don't have any money for, but if you want to, this is a safe place to play. And another one that says, I'm looking for people and I got money. You know? and if you apply to the one that says, I'm looking for people and I have money, you got to know how to do it. So you might want to start with the volunteer one and then go to the paid one. You know, so those are all things that are there. And again, as our volunteer system, you know, builds up around what we're doing, it's going to be an incredible place for a lot of people to just learn how to work together and all over the world and learn that process in a large sense. But the goal is always to continue to provide the opportunity for all of our members to, you know, work with both help each other create new businesses as well as hire each other, you know, as they move forward. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Ash Adev in New York City, and he says, anyone have experience with the Nikon Z50 versus the Fuji X-s10 as webcams? I have Nikon and Fuji glass and wondering what would be the better option.
Go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, I have the Nikon Z7, which is the bigger version of the Z50. As a webcam, it's going to be, you know, they're not really designed as webcams. I too have a big investment in a Nikon glass. So the better option, as you didn't specify any budget, would be to get, and I'm going to see if I can get this to work. That's why I got the Ursa, because it has an F-mount kit, and therefore you can put your Nikon glass on that. Yeah, it's a bit of overkill for a webcam, but it gets you into the Blackmagic ecosystem.
Yeah, I mean, as a webcam, as you're looking at the XS10, you're now getting very close to the cost of the 6Ks. And I know that you already have glass, for something else, but you're only gonna need one piece of glass. So if you're using it as a webcam, you need a 24-70, lens. It's going to, as a webcam, solve your needs in that area. So I would also look at that as well, because it's going to build you towards the ecosystem that you're looking for. But I think that I might lean towards the X-s10 as a webcam, but that's if you have both, if it's equal. But if you have, it really will come down to where do you have more glass. So next question.
Next one's in from Leo Mendel in Pinner UK, and he says, Zoom is releasing a new view focus mode on 7th of August. Could this be a big piece of Zoom events and Zoomtopia on September 13th?
What is the focus mode? Do you know, Leo? You asked the question.
I just had it up, and now I haven't got it. So they've added it in, and it's sort of been put in as they do as just like a sneak thing that's going to be coming in. It allows the host to see participants' videos or profile pictures when the video is off. So you've got to work out what that means. And then additionally, participant screen sharing can only be viewed by the host, who can switch between multiple shared screens and allow the participants to view other shared screens. That's the beginning part of it.
So I think that the issue is that I think this has to do with privacy, that people, the host wants to see everybody or who's there, but they don't necessarily want to show everybody to everyone else. So I think that's my guess. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, I think it also kind of takes away the hide non-video participants in meetings specifically. And then also for meetings, it allows kind of more of a free form sharing of things where the host can drive what's being seen to the audience.
Yeah, go ahead, Rupert.
This might also be directed towards the education space. If a teacher wants to see all the students, but not relay all that. Also, it may be a step in the direction of the kind of producer role that we've been looking for Zoom to have, where a host can make more of those decisions.
Next question.
Next one's coming in from Rupert, and he says, the Zoom release notes for the upcoming July 19th update includes adding videos to waiting rooms. This seems interesting. What might be some use cases?
Well, I think that you could definitely have especially if people come in really early, you can have a little overview of what you're going to talk about. You could have skill set, like things to think about, and just something to entertain them while they're waiting. So, go ahead, David.
Yeah, we were talking about this in the kitchen yesterday. Also to have a rolling video of frame yourself like this, make sure the lighting's like that, any sort of pre-prep kind of things you can do.
Yeah, it'd be really cool. That'd actually be really slick. Go ahead, Leo.
Yeah, and I think the other thing will be that they can actually make sure that their speakers are working, because the number of people who join that forget that they actually have to connect audio, and it's all a bit of a rush. So at least it'll get that working.
Yeah. Next question.
Next one's in from Fred Eric Eckert in Bad Herrenball, Germany, and he says, Dante AV, Dante audio and video. What's the panel's thoughts about it?
I don't really get it. I get why they're doing it. This is an obvious thing that you would want to do if you're already good at transporting audio, is to transport video. It's just that it's complex and heavy, and there's a lot of movement in the market. So when it came out, it seemed like an obvious thing for them to do. I just don't know. I don't know anybody that's actually doing it. So I think that's the challenge. But I could see someone who's heavy into Dante already, using Dante audio, getting into video and going, well, that's something I already know. I'm going to add on to this. So as an ecosystem add-on, it could work. I just haven't seen it in the wild. Next question.
Internet Explorer 11 end of life is August 17th, 2021. I still come across home users, corporate, and education with IE11 as the default. As sites drop support, are there many unsuspecting users about to get caught out?
Go ahead, Rupert.
Yes, over and out.
They're what?
Yes, over and out.
Yeah. It's we're just so glad it's gone. I'm just sorry. Like, it just has to, we just have to get rid of it. At some point, you have to kick it off. What do they call it when I don't know if anyone watched Norseman, where they had some people just run off the cliff because they, that we're no longer going to feed you, so we're just going to have you run off the cliff and just if you haven't seen the Netflix show Norseman, it's worth it. Just not for that, but for other things. Anyway, go to Jeffrey.
The only thing I can think about is if there's any type of legacy devices out there that still need IE to run, then that'll be the only problem. Other than that, yeah, it should go as quick as it can.
Yeah. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Douglas Carmichael, and he says, there's a Manfrotto baby tripod holding a video assist monitor on the ATEM Mini page, and he's got a link here. Which model could that be?
I don't see it. I don't know. When I go to that page, go ahead, Ken. Oh, that's just a little head. That's the little, oh, that little monitor? Oh, that little one? Yeah. Mini tripod. There you go. Yeah, it's a little Manfrotto tripod. I think that one's, it's nice. I like the, what are they called? Oh, no, I don't have it in front of me, but there are a couple of, there's a lot of little tripods that are like that. I don't know if that one, does that one screw off? Does the top part screw off to expose a 3/8? Go ahead, Ken.
Yes, it does. I would not, that photo with that, because I have the video assist, it is a heavy beast. And yeah, that must be just very lightly balanced on that. I wouldn't think that tripod supports that very well.
Mine, I don't like it taking up, because I end up wrapping a lot of things around it. The one that I use here this is an Oben, and it's like a little, this is holding a Fix 240, which is a beast, much heavier. It's got a big battery on it. This is an Oben, and then I have a Manfrotto actually, or maybe it's an Oben head. So a 360 or a ball head here. It does have it's important that it has and I don't, maybe the Manfrotto has that, but it's important that it has a place where it can go full 90, when it pulls back. Otherwise you end up in a kind of a hitch. But this, I've bought tens of those, at least, if not hundreds of them. They're super useful and they're very durable, but Oben makes those. Those are the TT100s is what I use that are similar to that. I don't know whether the price is the same or different. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
I used, when I had my video assist before it died, I used the Movo version of that tripod. It was lower to the ground than the tripod that we saw there. And that worked really well. And sometimes I actually put two things on it because I still had the live stream effect to it. So I'd basically bring an HDMI cable into the assist, out of the assist, into a device that would then stream out to Facebook and YouTube. And it worked really well. It had the same ball joint and everything.
Go ahead, Leo.
So that's the Pixie Evo. I have one of those Pixie Evos because I bought it in an Amazon sale. It does do the 90 degrees. It flips back on itself in one setting. It's actually quite useful. It's one of the things I carry all the time because it just gets me out of trouble lots and lots of times too. It's pretty rock solid and it will actually expand. So it will go for, it's got two heights.
Oh, wow.
That's it.
That's great. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Douglas Carmichael, and he asks, when I discussed the U.S. Air Force studying supersonic travel for senior leaders, it was said that it is sometimes more secure to be in the same room when at that level. Would better encryption/link security resolve that issue?
Go ahead, Rupert.
You may not know about the encryption and security that's at that level. There is plenty of ways to secure communication at that high level, but bear in mind, moving people around has risks too, and you have to balance those risks. In terms of supersonic flight in the wider market, I mean, just remember that we had Concorde for that, and that doesn't exist anymore.
I'm not going to say anything. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Robert Shoji in Los Angeles, and he says, how are the iPhone 8 and newer able to produce a very good looking HDMI output with such small sensors?
Computational photography. Go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, the 100+ Apple developers
at least.
Yeah, just working on that is why it produces magic from such a small piece of camera. Yeah,
we're every day we're getting more and more away from what the sensor captured and just processing the sensor, and we're getting more and more into interpreting what the sensor sees, which is what's interesting is when you talk to folks that talk about the brain, they say very much the same thing. Like, we've made sense of what's around us. When we were born, we don't have any sense of it. It's just an enormous, it's like a raw sensor just pulling a bunch of stuff in, or it knew what it could see, back, when it was, still in the, before it made the move. So before, but there's an enormous amount of sensory input that comes in that all was muffled and whatever. And then it slowly forms that. But that's why, at least it's interpreted. No one can talk to a baby when it's, when it's born, but it's interpreted that's why it's kind of just looking out, because it's just a whole bunch of things that may not be what we think that it is, and our minds slowly turn it into something and then find definition around it. And so, in the same sense, the iPhone specifically is interpreting what it says, and it's getting better and better and better at it. And computational photography is going to be the future of what we do. Now, I do think nothing replaces a larger sensor. So what will be great is if Apple starts making those sensors bigger and adds the computational photography, we're going to get more and more data. And they're already adding the LiDAR into it. They're already adding other things into it. So, that calculation is going to get pretty amazing. Next question.
Another one in from Douglas Carmichael, and he says, will we be seeing season 2 of Mad in the Kitchen? We talk about adding cooking back to the office hours mix. I think leveraging the MITK brand and community could also help bring more people to office hours.
Yeah, I think we're gonna focus mostly on a more, at least to start, we're gonna focus more on a less produced show. So this goes the other direction from what our main show is going towards. And we found that for a lot of us, there was something magical about being with the cook and not having to feel like we had to have a script, or that we had to have video production, or that we had to have lots of cues, but we were really just experiencing something as less of a show. I think that the Mad in the Kitchen thing was incredibly valuable to us because we learned a lot, we built up a lot. There's a place for that show as well. It also ties up a bunch of our hardware so to do it, which we won't be able to do in the future. So I think that there's a possibility that people here could put it into the cloud and make it work. And I hope that someone does that. I think that, bluntly, I think that we got what we needed out of the experience as far as learning stuff and figuring a bunch of pieces out. And I'd like to experiment with some new things as we go through it to make that work. And I think that I think it was an incredibly great opportunity that we had. And I think it was a good opportunity for Madeline and team to push things forward. And I think it was a great opportunity for us to learn a lot about the program. We took on experiments like having Nate cut remotely. That was like, I don't know if we can do that, but we were willing to test it with that. And now we do it all the time. So like, it's like, that's how you do this, and so there's a bunch of things that were part of our pipeline that I think were really, and there was a bunch of new, like we had not used Unity before that. It was all ClearCom and we were switching over. And so being able to experiment with that and figure out what we like and don't like, and, that kind of thing was really good. And so, but I think that where we're going with the cooking is to move more towards the Zoom experience of, there was something about a lot of us sitting there working together. Now, the other thing we are going to take is we are going to do, even with our show, there'll be the behind the scenes version of our show every day. As we get up, maybe not day one, but by the end of September, you'll be able to watch our show from the behind the scenes. Same thing where you hear comms, you can multi-pin things. We're going to do more things like that. So we also learned that was really successful. We actually had more people typically watching that than watching the show. So we're going to do more of that, a lot more of that. And that was a very important part of our testing, was to see if that was a valid thing to do. We're already talking to some friends of mine that are shooting a movie in October, end of October, early November, and they're shooting a film, and they're high school classmates of mine, and we're talking about putting it right into their set, so you get to watch the camera tap and some videos of a real film being shot, and then you'll be able to ask questions and stuff like that, and so it could be really cool. So we're going to take lots of bits and pieces of that, but the cooking, I think, was going to be first focused on Damayanti's. We're just going to work with her and Hosmuk for a while and just do that one. figure that out, because I just feel like that was something that was kind of magical. And then we're talking about another one that will probably be kind of like global cuisine that quite possibly Shannon will kind of hub, but it's more of her finding cooks, but doing it again over Zoom in a much more interactive, solution, for that, without kind of the artifice of all the show stuff, where we're just all working through it. So those are the two that we're kind of playing with right now. Next question.
Another one in from Douglas Carmichael, and he asked, if being in the same room is the only acceptable choice from a security standpoint for a use case, could we design healthier, safer, better sounding, looking, and more efficient rooms based on the knowledge developed in our current era?
Go, Rupert.
So a lot of people trying to figure this out, mainly from the commercial real estate sector, because they're trying to figure out how to design spaces that are going to be attractive to people. So I would say check out what those people are doing, because they're trying to do some things. Check out Jones Lang LaSalle or CBRE. They're all trying to come up with new office designs that make things attractive. But for these secure type scenarios, like I said before, there are still risks to moving people around. And if the remote thing can be figured out for them, then that will probably be much safer.
A lot of remote stuff can be done pretty securely. It's not like, I mean, we have things that are in person, but there's an awful lot that gets done. A lot of decisions, very high level decisions, are made in secure facilities. It's just that each node has to be known. So you have a known room that makes it work. Nobody has any electronics. You go through those types of things. Take off your watch. Take off everything, not everything, but take off all your electronics. And you can those are pretty common. I don't think that the security is at the end of the day. The security is trusting the people that are in the room, and that trust is going to make more of a difference at that point. I think that we're now talking about very small percentages of things, after that. Next question.
Next one's in from Mike Beardmore, and he says, clarifying the previous question, will there be an FAQ of minimum equipment, apps, and time needed to contribute as a backroom/backstage person to Office Hours 2.0?
Well, the backroom stuff will want everyone to, the goal is everybody can contribute to that. As far as what the minimum requirements are of what to know, not to be a panelist, but to be helping. We're going to put something out. We're going to start building teams. We're going to give people that we know have more experience than others an opportunity to kind of have a more of a lead role in those teams. But generally, you'll get a less, if we don't know you, it doesn't matter what your skill set is. If we don't know you, you'll have a less responsibility until we get to know you. So that'll be, that's kind of the, and again, the way to get to be known is through Mukana, through Discord, through the panel, through taking on projects. There have been people that I've seen literally do a project and I go, oh, now I understand that they're really good at this, and this. And so I think that those are, so I think that there'll be lots of opportunities, and many of them will be very basic at the beginning, and even something that's not right up your alley might be something that you might want to jump into. Next question.
Rupert Gray says, I joined SMPTE. What should be the first benefit that I seek out?
Discounts on the seminars. They have, the seminars are a little dry, but they're good. Like there's definitely, and then they have, I think SMPTE has a little conference that is coming up in the fall. So you want to keep your eye out for that. And then you should get a nice little magazine. There's a SMPTE magazine that'll show up that might be electronic as well. But they do a lot of member only, webinars that again are a little dry by our standards, but very effective at, I've a lot of times let them play in the background and I'm able to listen to them. And there's lots of good data. It just comes at a very slow pace. Next question.
Bo Cordell says, does anyone plan on watching the Olympics in HDR? Looking forward to Office Hours deep dive into HDR.
I'm planning to try to watch a little of it. Go ahead, Leo.
You may be planning to watch it in HDR, but it's not HDR. It's what they're saying is they're not going to be taking HDR out, or they're not taking 4K out of the venues. They both main broadcasters, which BBC and who's in NBC, have said they can't. They've run out of time, and they're going to be upscaling to 4K back at the ranch. So there's a big article on it on IBC about what they've decided they are going to do. So they just ran out of time.
What I'm really interested in is the NHK tests. So we'll see what's available outside of Japan. But NHK has been working on this for a long time. So the NHK tests are the most interesting part of this puzzle. And I don't know whether that'll happen live or in post, but that's the 8K 120 stuff that they've had running for years just for this event. So it's being shot somewhere, just a matter of where. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Douglas Carmichael, and he says, what hardware and software tools are used to automate and control professional level rooms? Do AMX, Crestron still lead the market, or are there other automation tools that are less expensive and more accessible?
Go ahead, Rupert.
So there are a lot of bits and pieces out there, as well as some bigger solutions. If you look up the Zoom Room hardware and even the Microsoft Teams hardware, both of those give you a list of all the certified automation systems that they will work with, and that will tell you what systems are out there.
Go ahead, David.
And there's another company by the name of Savant that does more for home automation, but we've looked at them for the enterprise. Wasn't quite up to the Crestron look and feel and customization, but another viable option.
We find Crestron to be extremely painful to program at first, but wow, but it just does the thing. like when you get it running and you get it working, especially in a broadcast. I was in a broadcast facility in Chicago that has another one in Czechoslovakia, and when they go show to show to show to show to show, and they just push a button, and the whole, like literally the entire system is reconfigured for a regular show. Everything's pre-configured of these are all the graphics and these are all the things, and this is all we're going to do. And they just push a button and everything's ready for the next show in like while there's like a 1 minute break and everything's set up for the next show. So it's a very powerful system and very rock solid, but painful. Especially in a home environment. My initial introduction to Crestron was at the ranch at Skywalker Ranch we had a media room in the main house on the main floor. There was a media room that had a Crestron, and it was just constantly trying to figure out how to get video onto the screen was like the first 15 minutes of every meeting. Go ahead, Nigel.
Yeah, there's a new version of Crestron for the sort of low end of the market called Crestron Home, which is more drag and drop iPad. But Crestron Full is for commercial, and it's scaling huge.
Yeah. Next question.
David Brady asks, recently upgraded to an iPhone 11. Is this capable of photogrammetry? And if so, what apps are office hours rated?
The iPhone 11, and that's the LiDAR one, right? So yeah, so it's the 12, I think, is the one that has LiDAR, which is really where the object capture comes in, but you can do photogrammetry from anything. So, so photogrammetry is just taking those photos. And at this point, I would probably play with reality capture, because it's free. I think that it was given, it's now, Epic bought it, and I think it's now a free app to use. The one that I'm most familiar with is Metashape, which I've done tons of work with. It's really easy, and you just want to, we'll do another lab with that. I mean, I think we did one early on, but you just grab a bunch of photos and throw them into a bin and hit go and walk away. And it comes back, and some of them get kicked out, and you look at them and go, why did it get kicked out? And then you learn, and we can probably do a lab with some of those. And I can even take some of the photos that I've taken and let everyone play with them and so on and so forth. But you can definitely do it with an iPhone. The main thing is you just want to make sure not to change the zoom. And one of the problems you end up with the iPhone is it does a little bit of autofocusing. So if you can get an app that will lock your focus, so whether it's a halide or something else like that, you want to lock the focus because it actually changes the focal length just a little bit. So lock it and then take all your photos. And the main thing is that if you think about an object, what you want are vanishing points. So you might take some orthographic, but what you really want are the angled ones like this, and then you want them to overlap by 30 to 50% between photos, so that it has lots of points it can look at that are similar on both photos, so that it can reference those. And that's how it tightens the object, because the first thing it's going to do is look for points of interest. Then it's going to identify those same points. It's going to match the points of interest between the cameras. Then it's going to use those points of interest to calculate reverse triangulate the camera position. And then from there, it's going to project that back forward and build the geometry. So it's the best thing to do is take lots of them. Like I do I'm not in the last 3 months, but generally I do photogrammetry almost every day. Like I just take pictures of things that I think are interesting and I throw them into a bot, I throw them in a Metashape, or I do something else and I just let it cook. And then it just lets you triangulate how to do it. Your brain will get used to like where you have to stand and so on and so forth. Yeah. Next question.
Next one. Oh, shoot. Hit the wrong one. How do you get that one back?
Just keep going. We're running out of time.
Okay,
We'll
sure.
have to come back to it.
I got next one's.
There we go.
You got it. So that one at the top. It seems that even with bands that heavily use electronic elements, they still use acoustic drums live. Would that be because of the difference in feel to the drummer, even sacrificing the sonic flexibility offered by electronic drums or triggers?
I think a lot of times it looks better, but I think also Jeffrey would probably be better at letting us know if there's a certain, go ahead, Jeffrey. Can't hear you.
Yeah, I've been doing a lot of, I've actually been doing a lot of hybrid drumming, and this last year I've actually switched to about 95% digital drumming. The only drum that actually stays on stage as an acoustic and a digital trigger is the bass drum. And the reason why is because the stage vibration for the band members, that's the one thing that a lot of people miss, is that feel of the thump as well as the sound. Other than that, sound control is just amazing. Remove the cymbals off the stage or anything like that, then all of a sudden the band members start to hear things a little bit better. And then they start taking their guitar amps off the stage, or they move it to the side and they put on protective barriers so it doesn't get on the stage sound. And all of a sudden we can hear each other and start to play a lot better. So it's like with keyboards. At one time, everybody said, "Oh, hammer keyboards need to be on stage every single time," but now everybody's using digital, and eventually I think that'll just flip to digital once the technology just kind of catches up to it.
Next question.
Tony Mobley says, I'm on vacation in a 5G city. I would like to come in on the 5G iPad, maybe during education hours, since no YouTube. Project-based learning, ? No 5G at home.
You should give it a shot. Yeah, I think that would be great. Next question.
James Babbitt in San Diego says, is there a video filter of making corn fritters with Damayanti Gujar?
I think that's up there. I think we did stream that, so it's not up there. So we'll have to take a look, but there's gonna be a lot more new ones coming up. So stay tuned for that. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael asks, what software tools have been helpful for managing productions and keeping crew on the same page? I've used Atlassian Confluence in the IT world, but not sure if it would adapt to our industry.
And I need to step away. So I'm going to go ahead and finish these last couple questions. And then I'm just going to have you read the questions and just kind of run the conversation. And hopefully I'll be back by education, but if not, bring the educators in and start the conversation with Emily. But I got to put out a little fire. So I'll see you guys in a little bit.
All righty. Sounds good. All right. Let's go ahead, Rupert.
So yeah, I'm familiar with Atlassian, and it has its pros and its cons. The thing with things like that is that kind of follows the, you edit a page and you think about it and then you publish it. So it's not like true real time. It is cloud-based, but for production and more collaborative real-time environments, you want to perhaps use something that is cloud-based and real-time, like OneNote or Google Notes or Google Sheets or Google Docs or something like that. And if you're using the app, let's say on a mobile device, that'll allow you to make edits offline, and then when you get back online, it'll sync up. So that kind of gives you the best coverage from that point of view.
That's interesting because here locally we had MSNBC, and my old roommate was part of the team, and they used Jira, which was also from that same company, to handle the entire cycle of the Reuters feeds coming in, what photos they were going to pull, all the web pages, everything was handled through that. So I'm sure that you can adapt it to the industry. All right, we're going to go ahead and move on to the next question. Another one in from Douglas Carmichael, and it says, would there be any commercial applications for high performance parallel computing clusters in our industry outside of the research world? Networked rendering comes to mind, but are there other applications that could make use of a cluster? And let's go, Rupert.
I mean, we've had like rendering farms for 20 years. I remember setting up networks for those things 15 years ago. But I think all the new AI, VR stuff, that's all going to rely on, distributed computing and multi-threaded processing, and you just need to look at the kind of services that AWS are developing just for that.
Yeah, that's interesting. I know Jim plays a lot in that that field. Douglas, you might want to jump into the post show. I've been thinking about rolling a whole $7 into a G4DN bare metal instance and then running some speed tests on it. So if anybody wants to play in the post show one of these days, we'll fire one up, and whatever app. I know there's an Intel diagnostics tool that will push it to its limit, but it's got like 100 gigabit connection, so we could run speedtest.net and see what 10,000 megabits per second looks like. And if there's anything else you guys want to run through it, vMix, Livestream Studio. Go ahead, Leo.
One of the areas I can see happening more and more, and we've seen it in sport, is the virtual reality, putting on adverts onto the screen and changing them on the destination. That is sort of, some of it's good, some of it's a bit crude, but I think that's going to get better and better, and it's going to need to be pushed through engines that are rendering real time and putting it out during actually the live sporting environment, and it will be different outputs in different countries. So I can see that sort of thing needing to have a lot of processing power to deliver.
Awesome. Let's go ahead and move on to the next one. This one has a few downvotes, but we'll go ahead and take it anyway. With the exponential increase in computing power on the desktop and diversity of plugins, where does that leave flagship multi-effects units like the Eventide H900? And he's got a link here, and it looks like Craig wants to take that one.
Yeah, I think that the boxes like that are still going to be, they still have a place, especially when you look at the Waves hardware systems as well. But for sure, these companies are transitioning to having plugins going into your computer directly for your DAW.
Yeah, it looks like we're short on questions for the first hour. We've got quite a few for the education hours. It looks like Douglas has been populating a lot of these. If Douglas, you can give somebody else a chance here. Let's looks like we got one in from Steve Mahaz. Or actually, Rupert, you want to jump on first?
It may also depend on whether you're in live or post-production, because if you're in live, the more plugins and stuff, you're just building up that little bit of latency. So there may still be some live environments where you just need hardware to get it through in real time.
All right, looks like this next one from Steve Mahaz in Boston was for Alex, and hopefully Alex will be back soon, but maybe somebody else can talk about linear versus circular lens polarizers for controlling eyeglass reflection. Anyone on that one? I know that he put some kind of filter over his lights to control the light angle. Go ahead, Craig.
Yeah, I think it was Courtney who brought this up a few months back, and it was a linear polarizer. I think the main plan that he described was you first tune it on your camera so that you tune out the reflection glasses from your screens, and then you put it over your light so that kills that reflection as well.
Yeah, go ahead, David.
Do those, and I'm not sure if you know, Craig, but do they have to be kind of at 90 degrees to each other? So where the camera filter would be 180, not sure how.
Yeah, and that's what I said. And again, this is my understanding. I haven't done it yet. I'd love to, but I haven't gone that far yet down the rabbit hole. Because your LCD screen has a polarizer in it, and you want to start with the reflection from that in your glasses, and it should be 90 degrees. Anybody who's tried to look at especially the outdoor LCD panel advertising screens with your polarized glasses on, you sort of got to take them sideways. So it's the same basic concept. So it is at 90 degrees, but it just depends on where you're starting. And like I said, starting with the screen, tuning out the reflection in your glasses, and then working from there. Because obviously the screen is one thing you're not going to, it's going to be fixed.
And I guess that being said, the circular filter would probably be applicable to, rotating shutters on webcams? Or?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I use circular polarizers when I used to be heavily into photography, but I'm not sure. I think it comes down to how the video cameras work versus an SLR.
Yeah, I remember one cool Lee Filters demo at NAB where they actually put this filter over the windows, and then you would put the filter on the camera lens, and as you rotated the circular polarizer, it would dim the background. So if you had a lot of light coming in from a background and you wanted to see like the buildings and the detail instead of just blown out, you could just use this film and then rotate it. It's really cool. It worked really, really well. There's probably some demos still online that you can watch. We'll go ahead and move on to the next question. And my apologies on this one, Rupert, that I skipped your question earlier when I was trying to actually grab the piece that you were talking about. So Eric Price in Leavenworth, Kansas says, looks like Rupert's question came up and then was skipped. A Triad Orbit tripod was recently mentioned on office hours. Triad Orbit seems to be a whole ecosystem of mounting hardware. What are the panel's thoughts on this system overall compared to others? And I'm using one right now. A lot of the pieces look like this. It's just an ecosystem where it's like a pin. And so like this one would be that's a 3/8. And so you can get like a 5/8. You get all kinds of different pins like this, and then mount different things like your microphone, and you can articulate. So I've got one on my backlight. I've got my prompter on one. If I want to put like a desk, like carry around a desk, I can rotate that and put that wherever I want. So if I'm on location, I can put a camera on. I could put an ATEM Mini on that desk. I can just build it to whatever I want. And there's lots of clamps. There's a great Instagram that they have if you want to zip through some of the studios that they've put these items in. Go ahead, Rupert.
So I was just looking at their website recently, and so from what you showed there and what I saw, it looks like a kind of quick release system. And on their website, they showed like somebody attaching a light, upside down to a receiver in the ceiling. And I thought, wow, I'd want a safety cable on that.
Yeah, depending on how heavy some of this stuff is, like they do have for PTZ optics and cameras like that, where you want to just put them onto the wall. They do have some really robust things that you can drill into the wall and then quick disconnect. It's fascinating how much stuff. I mean, the first time the guy came to our store, we sell this stuff. I outrigged his whole. I used every piece. In fact, I have it all here. I mean, I wound up buying everything that he had, so I have one of each. It's amazing stuff. It's like how can you live without? Like right here, I can't really pull it down, but I've got a gooseneck arm with that same quick release. So I can throw a camera up there, I can throw a light up there. And that's the benefit is mic, camera, light, just where you want it and move it within fractions of an inch instantly. And it's super durable, like it's tough. And then the other big thing is for the tripod, getting it in places where you wouldn't think that you can get a tripod because the base is so stable. Like if you saw it at NAB or a trade show, that's exactly where I saw it first with Cinegear. It was like, how is that physically possible that you could put that much weight on something like that? Because the base is super heavy. So hope that answers your question, Rupert. Would you want to add to that, Rupert?
Yes. But what are the similar systems? I mean, are they the only people doing that kind of thing in terms of the quick release, universal, whatever?
Go ahead, Ken.
iFootage have just recently released their thing called Spider Crabs. That's a kind of quick release system that I'm using to hold up my my Blackmagic 6K Pro behind me. Yeah, there's only about 4 or 5 different options that they have, but the quick release part of it is really good. It's really works well. It's really strong.
Go ahead, David.
Yeah, and I can't get to the rig that I bought at B&H, but there was something because I remember a guy turned me on to that brand and it's a little outside my price point. So went to B&H. I was just looking online. It's not in my history, so because I physically went there and purchased it. I'll hit you up in Discord with.
Cool. I'd love to see it. Yeah, there's military grade, and then there's like, let's just get by. And so there's lots of Chinese, there's small rig, there's Manfrotto, lots of stuff, Israeli arms. There's some really high quality stuff. But, and then of course, for the bigger stuff, msegrip.com has some crazy, like I have some Cardellini's, or they call them Mathelinis. So Cardellini's are also a clamp with a stud, and then you can just use kind of the ecosystem from Manfrotto or some of the other manufacturers to go from there. Let's go ahead and take the next question. It's coming in from Tommy Tichance in St. Paul, Minnesota. And he's asking, Minnesota, any tips on recording PowerPoints to OBS? I seem to be missing something. Crickets. Tommy, I would say the way that I would do it is, I do it through NDI. So I hook up a second one, and then well, does he just want to record it on the same computer? Go ahead, Rupert.
I mean, I'm just kind of putting this together in my head, but if you were trying to do it on the same computer, you'd want to have two screens ideally, and then you'd be outputting your presentation to one screen, and then hopefully that'll give you a clean full screen feed, and then you can run OBS on your other screen and then do a screen capture of your other screen and then just run through your slides.
Go ahead, Leo.
Yeah, the big issue is always about capturing the resolution. If you're capturing just what you think is your screen and then doing it there, you'll probably end up being too low, and that will be your issue. So you want to put it to almost to a virtual screen that's much larger. I also put in a second hour on this in Discord, suggesting about how we do PowerPoint and or everything else on there. So if this is of interest, please upvote to that.
Yeah, and the other way that we use is what's called a window capture mode. So you add window capture, and then when you double click on that window capture as the source, it'll allow you to choose any open window. So if you are running it on the same system, you can then grab that PowerPoint window and then go ahead and start your record, and that will pick up just that window. And you can make your canvas whatever size you want. So if you did want limited to your screen size, so if you had a 4K display, you can capture a 1920 by 1080 window. Let's anybody else? David Brady.
The other thing you could do is just render the presentation out as a video file if it doesn't need cues or anything. We've done that in the past. Pretty clean.
All righty, well, with that, or Jeffrey Powers.
One last thing to remember, and that is your computer. If it is, if you're running minimal specs on the computer, putting that second screen, doing the screen scrape, and bringing that in OBS is going to take a lot of resource, and that might cause a lot of hiccups. So make sure that you've tested it, and make sure you have a good amount of resources on the machine.
Yeah, that's when I would also recommend just having a second system. I mean, it's nice to do NDI. So you go to the NDI Tools in Google and download them, and then do one machine playing the PowerPoint, and then pick that up via NDI screen capture on the other machine, and then you can record that. Go ahead, Rupert.
So if your slides have a lot of detail, don't use really high compression. Try and get it at a really decent uncompressed high bit rate and all that stuff.
All right, we'll go ahead and take the next question. Douglas Carmichael asks, has anyone ever used Apple's sidecar feature to connect a Mac with an iPad? I'm thinking of using it for music lesson apps like Melodics, but latency seems like it could be an issue. And Ken, you want to go ahead and grab that one?
Yeah, I do use it. If you're concerned about latency, then use the USB connection. If you connect it via that, then that gets rid of any latency.
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Yeah, I actually, this last week, I just tried using Melodics and found that it's a great program. But once again, you're bringing in, even though it is MIDI, you will have some sort of latency probably going through here. But I guess it's just test it and see if it works for music, because you need a super low latency for anything, and especially because that's going to push audio back out through the computer of what you're playing.
All righty, let's go ahead and move on to the next one, coming in from Rupert McRae, and he says, the Zoom webinar limit for panelists is 100 people. That is a lot, but has anyone heard of that limit being a problem? And let's go ahead and jump over to Leo.
So I think the biggest problem, and I haven't seen this happen yet, is you've got only 48 on the view in here. So when you hit more than 48, I'm going to be really interested to know how we're going to see whose hands are going to go up, because if you're on the second screen, you're never going to be seen.
Go ahead, Rupert.
I guess that's an interesting distinction there. I know a while back we saw that Teams was, Microsoft Teams was releasing a gallery view that will span over two windows, two monitors, and give you a 98 something gallery experience. It'd just be interesting to see how that size of panel really worked in reality.
Go ahead, Leo.
Because the problem you've got is you can't put you can't gallery onto the second screen. So you're only going to see 48. So you're going to have to flip back and forwards between the 48s.
In Zoom.
In Zoom,
yeah.
So you're going to have to flip backwards and forwards. Now, I don't believe, and someone could correct me, I don't believe there has been an office hours with more than 48. We've got very close on sometimes. I don't know if we've ever gone over it. And if so, if you end up on the second page, are you lost to the view?
William.
Also, I understand that office hours 2 is supposed to incorporate eventually AI, which is keeping track of who's participating the most, etc., and they would be closest at hand. So I don't know how that's going to be handled, whether there's some algorithm for it to pick up other people.
Yeah, doesn't Zoom do that where it shuffles around people who are talking the most? Rupert, go ahead.
Yeah, if somebody isn't in your gallery but they start speaking and become active speaker, I think they will slot into your gallery and somebody else will jump out.
Go ahead, Leo.
Yeah, that is no problem. But when you're thinking, if you're sitting as you're doing now, Guy or Alex, and you're calling on people, you're not going to know that they're with their hands up because they're not on your list. So the actual dynamics of how the system operates suddenly break down when you can't do that. So we would then be forced to start doing virtual hands up. And as we know, that has been an issue in the past that has been not liked on this show.
Yeah, go ahead, Rupert.
Could you have two machines logged in? One have the gallery view on page 1 and the other one on page 2?
I don't think
Yes,
you
you
can.
do.
Can you? Go ahead, Leo or David.
No, I'm pretty sure that's doable.
It is doable, but again, it's down to exactly what you said. You people move, and you've got to, and you shuffle it. And I mean, it was interesting for the first time in a while when we went into a spotlight or we went into something earlier, and when we came back again. Typically, Alex is always my top left, and I never move him, and I never need to move him. He jumped to somewhere sort of fourth along for the first time in ages. I noticed that earlier today.
Go ahead, Jim Hankins.
I imagine there's some Zoom OSC magic we can wire together to solve this problem, to get the people that have their hands up to be on the first screen without
Go ahead, Craig.
too much difficulty.
I was just going to go along with what Leo was saying as far as where people end up, except I always not pin, excuse me, in my gallery view, I move people around and then it stays that way. So for me, the people who are typically either Alex or whoever's asking the questions are usually in my gallery right nearest where my camera is. And then it doesn't matter, people come and go. And I do that on other meetings where I have more than 48 people, so that stays there. The problem in that case, like you say, though, is then nobody ever moves. So I never get anybody from the other page over.
All right, we'll go ahead and start speeding this up a little bit, but let's take 10 seconds from Ken and then Leo.
No, it was just a matter of housekeeping. Just that I know Alex likes to finish roundabout.
Yeah, that's why
now,
let's wrap this. Yeah, give those guys some space. So we'll stop here in a few minutes, give these guys at least 5 minutes before the top of the hour. And so Leo, go ahead and take it.
So what I was going to finish on is that this is where we get to that edge case, or we get to the limit of this is what Zoom was built as a meeting platform and not as a production platform. And we're pushing it in a direction, and suddenly there is going to be these levels where we're going to bounce it beyond where it can do.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and shuffle a couple out to wait for tomorrow. And I'll take one last question, which is from Robert Shoji. And he asks, is there a way to guarantee a 720 experience in Zoom without paying for the more expensive paid accounts? Go ahead, Ross.
Well, I'm a late joiner. Hopefully the audio is good. And yeah, the mini portal, they go on sale every now and then, especially around Mother's Day and birthdays. You have that join your meeting and you will get up to 720.
Great. Ken?
And there's the famous Guy Cochran meetingmeters.com.
Yeah, we have a Zoom room that's online that it's in beta right now for when we get proper meters. But yeah, check it out, meetingmeters.com. You enter in the meeting information, it'll cruise in and bump up the meeting to 720 for free. Rupert, did you want to add something?
I was just going to say that, a single Zoom room, if you want to buy a license for that. It is a bit of money, but that also does give you some extended features locally that are useful. So it's not just about getting 720, you get an additional feature set right in front of you.
Sounds good. With that, we'll go ahead and close out the first hour, start bringing in all of our educators and give them time for a mic check. And let's see, Jeffrey, would you have time to do the mic check and pass host over to William's going to be cutting the show?
Yeah, I'll be doing that. So we're going to be turning off the YouTube. So thanks to everybody for coming. See you tomorrow is there no YouTube, but we'll see you Monday for office hours. But definitely come to the panel tomorrow and talk about